right, Jonathan, how has the current political climate been affecting your emotional well-being?
Well, my emotional well-being has been very well until this political climate has been happening. Um, as Nicole knows, I am not a big fan of our current president. And the number of protests, the number of uh, things that have just been happening within our society um, has just been escalating and gotten much, much worse. I live over here in Rochester on Park Avenue, and the protesters come down Park Avenue every now and then. And I understand the reason why they're doing this, and I understand what is going on, and I know what's going on with my own people, and I know that the political scenery within the Native Americans is not getting any better either, especially with our current president, and especially with COVID. I'm not sure if everyone's aware of what's happening with the Native Americans on reservations, but the fact that some of them don't have running water, some of them don't have heat or electricity, and that they live together. That's just part of our culture. Is we have families that have 12, 13, 14 people living in a trailer, and they don't have running water. So the fact that we have to practice social distancing, wash our hands, and wear a mask, they don't have that. They don't have that ability because they don't have the running water, and social distancing goes against our culture. So the number of deaths amongst Native Americans has risen considerably, which is something that's not even mentioned in any media. I think I happened to see it one time on CBS Morning News at 8 o'clock in the morning. They actually went to a reservation and they showed what's going on the reservations there. And the fact that the Native Americans have been dealing with disease, with social injustice for so many years. This is nothing new to us. We've always been able to adapt. We've always been able to adjust our way of lives, but COVID was something new that we were not expecting. And it has definitely impacted our lives. So the political scene for us right now, and for me, I'm hoping when I wake up Wednesday morning, it'll be something better than it has been for the past 4 years.
For sure. And you talked about in the past, you guys have had to adapt and overcome in different ways. And obviously with COVID, everyone has had to do those things, even like businesses too. So are there any ways that since COVID that you guys have had to adapt, like living wise?
Yes. Well, again, because of this, we don't have many places don't have running water on the reservations. They don't have heat or electricity, and social distancing is not part of our culture. But one of the things that we have had to do when we were adapting, on some reservations, there actually have roadblocks for the people that are coming onto the reservation and for the people going off the reservation, checking their temperature, checking to see where they've been, seeing what activities they've been involved in. And because of that, we've actually reduced the number of COVID cases, and we've kept it isolated within our own community. And we're not allowing other members to come and join us in our community and our reservations. And we're telling people, do not come here because we have the high number of COVID cases. And it's actually been very effective. We were one of the first groups of people to do this. And now other countries are doing that as well.
Okay, so thank you for that. That will segue into the next question we have, which is, have you ever experienced discrimination based on your race? And if so, how has that affected your day-to-day life?
My discrimination against my race has always been prevalent within our community, just because of Native Americans and how we are looked at. I have experienced it personally many times. One of the reasons why I say this is because in my everyday life, there are some people that don't even know that Native Americans are still alive. They thought that we had become extinct like an animal that was an endangered species. There have been situations where I've been actually, from my work environment, when I tell them I'm Native American, I get the response of, "Oh, you guys are still around? I thought we got rid of you." Um, I've also experienced discrimination because being Native American, then they assume there are certain characteristics that we have. And so they say, "Oh, so you smoke a lot of herb, or you smoke a lot of weed, and you collect a lot of welfare, and you drink a lot of alcohol, and you guys are bums, correct?" And hello, I don't do any of that. I work every day. There's also been discrimination from when I've gone into a medical environment and when they've asked me for my ethnic background and I tell them I'm Native American. Again, they assume these things, that these characteristics that they think that all Native Americans have, which we don't. The other places that I've experienced discrimination was that they look at me and they don't think I'm Native American. They think I'm either Asian, Puerto Rican, Hispanic, Latino, something else. So then they put that label on me and they assume these characteristics about me and they affiliate me with those characteristics. I've had police officers come up to me and say, "Weren't you just at Rochester General Hospital with so-and-so?" And I'm like, "I have no idea who you're talking about. I have no idea what you're referring to, but obviously you are categorizing me and you obviously are labeling me as an individual that you thought was this individual person that was involved with some type of situation. I am not that person." And they'll speak Spanish to me, and I'm sorry, I don't know Spanish. I know un petit, I know very little. I know a little bit of Spanish, but I don't know enough to be fluent. So yeah, I guess the worst ones are when they stereotype us and when they stereotype myself and they just put me in this category and they think that, oh, the worst one, I guess, is when they thought that we were all gone and we were extinct, like an endangered species. And they didn't realize that, yeah, I always tell them, yeah, you tried to get rid of us, but you did not succeed. There's many of us still around. Sorry.
As a Native American, what do you hold most dear about your culture, and what do you wish more people understood about it?
Well, again, of course, my culture is so important to me. The food, the clothing, the regalia, the dance, the songs, the heritage, our longevity here in North America, and just everything that we celebrate in our life. The fact that we have so much respect for other cultures, the fact that we have so much respect for our Mother Earth, the fact that we cherish our Mother Earth and that we take care of Mother Earth. The idea of recycling has something that we've always had our whole life, and it wasn't until recently that recycling now, putting things in recycling bins, that for some strange reason that's something new, but that's something that we've always practiced. So yeah, my culture is very close and dear and near to my heart, and again, so is Mother Earth. The one thing I wish people knew more about was just being educated about our culture. The one thing that's really missing in our education system is the fact that when you go into the history books, when you were studying history, whatever level of school you were in, elementary school, junior high school, college, when you go into the history book, there is very little about Native American culture and Native American history in those books. I remember my high school book, when we talked about Native American heritage, I think there was only one chapter that was maybe, I'm going to say 20 pages about Native American history. But when you think about Native American history, you have to realize that it's an accumulation of what's been happening before the Europeans got here. But American history does not teach that. They talk about American history when the Europeans got here. And they don't include the Native Americans and other groups of people that were here long before the Europeans, long before the Mayflower got here, long before the Pilgrims got here. So I guess I wish people will be more educated about that and know that, Native Americans, yes, we were here first. Um, there's a lot of pride in the fact that we feel that we are here first. You'll see if you go to reservations and if you go to powwows and cultural events that there are hats and that there are shirts that people that wear that will say First Nation, because we were the first nation here before the Europeans got here. So I guess that education is something I wish people knew more about. And again, the fact that they think that we're extinct. Um, that's that's the reason why I think the education is a very valuable part of of letting people know about our history, our culture, our values, our society. And the other thing I wish people knew more about, or wish there was more about, was more about the media and how we are not um, being portrayed in media, and then again, vice versa, how we are being portrayed in media, um, which is much more of a stereotypical way, and much more of a negative stereotypical way, which again leads to the lack of education of what people think about Native Americans.
Yeah, it really is unfortunate how many people do not know anything about Native Americans here, and you guys have been here way before Europeans, as you said. So I know you've been involved with your community. How exactly have you been active in the community? I know we've interpreted the festivals together, but even, people don't know about different tribes that exist. Do you mind elaborating on that?
Sure. My activities involved with the community. I'm involved with the Native American Culture Center. I'm involved with Ganondagan State Historical Site. I'm involved with American Indians of All Nations. I'm involved with the Intertribal Deaf Council. I'm involved with the American Indians of Science and Engineering Society. I'm a member of the National Museums of Science, the one that's in Washington, D.C. that I can't remember right now. It was the first Smithsonian that opened up for Native American culture. When they first opened up, I was involved with that. Been involved with a lot of protests that have happened, specifically related to Native Americans being portrayed as mascots in professional sports and high school sports and elementary schools. Being involved with a lot of what's been going on when they try to tax Native Americans for gas and for cigarettes, because we are a sovereign nation. And when they start to tax us, then we say, for example, many years ago, the governor of New York wanted to start a tax for Native Americans for the use of gas and for cigarettes on reservations. So we set up a roadblock on New York State through highway that goes right through one of the reservations and said, you want to tax us? Then we're going to charge you to come through our reservation. Then we set up another roadblock from a bridge from the United States to Canada, which is again on Native American land, which is a sovereign nation, saying if you want to cross this bridge, we're going to start a toll tax on you to come across this bridge. And people were like, what? Oh my gosh, you can't do that. I'm like, well, then don't tax us. We're a sovereign nation and independent. So yeah, I've been actively involved with a lot of different organizations throughout my whole career, throughout my life. And it's not just something that I feel very strongly about, and I will always be actively involved. And the ones that are true and near here in Rochester would be Ganondagan State Historical Site and the Native American Culture Center, which is located right here in Rochester.
Also, something that you mentioned in your response about being active in how Native American culture is portrayed in sports. I know something big that happened this year, football season, was the Washington football team and their name change. Because, growing up, at least for my sister and I think we were kind of ignorant to it. Like, we didn't know, like, we were Giants, Giants fans, and we played the Washington Redskins. And it was just, to us, I think as kids, we're like, it's a name. But then when you start to think about it, you're like, oh my gosh, that's messed up, man. So I'm really happy. Why it took so long to happen, who knows? But I'm happy that it did happen.
I can expand on that too, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Because it is a Native American mascot that they're using for that team, as well as for other teams, not just the Washington team, for the baseball teams, for the football teams, for the college teams, for the high school teams. I've always talked about this every time I give a presentation about why Native Americans should not be used as mascots is if you were to pick, let's just say, a Hispanic team, and you were to call them the Houston Hispanics, how would you portray them? And what would their mascot look like? If you had, let's just say, the New Jersey Jews, and how would you portray them? And what would their mascot look like? If we had a team called the Cleveland Caucasians, how would you portray them? And what would their mascot look like? And secondly, would people tolerate that? Would any race of people tolerate their team being portrayed negatively or in any manner? Would they tolerate that, and would they accept that? And my answer to that is they would not. I guarantee you, the Hispanics, the Latinos, the Jewish community, the Blacks, African Americans, any race of people, no matter what you picked to portray them and to have them as a mascot for your team, they would not tolerate it. So therefore, why should we?